Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. As always, I'm your host, Brad Minus, and today I'm extremely lucky, and we're going to take a little departure from our normally regular scheduled program because we're getting deep into an intellectual side of Life-Changing Challengers with my guest, and honored to have her on the show, Venchele Saint Dic. She is a master of public health. She's an author, and she's a writing brand strategist and coach. And she is in the middle of pursuing her doctorate in public health right now. And we need a lot more people like her. So Venchele, welcome. And how you doing today?
I'm doing good today, Brad. I'm just so thrilled to be here and just looking forward to our conversation. You did a brilliant job introducing me. That's one of the best intros, but thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. As always, I start out the same question with everybody. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, the environment you grew up in, where the complement of your family, and what was Venchele like as a kid?
Oh my goodness. I think right now, as soon as you said, who was I as a kid? I'm thinking to myself, well, the best person who can tell you is my father. I was born in the States. I was born in Florida, and then my family, my mother and my father decided that they wanted me to have a trilingual education. And so I went back to Haiti right after I was born. And I've pretty much lived there for probably 10 or 12 years. All my childhood, I spent it there. And so my family is from Haiti, Martinique, and France. And so I grew up in a household that was pretty diverse, a household where I felt seen and I felt heard. And I think most importantly, as a woman, I was given an opportunity to speak truth to power, to own my voice, or to at least to develop it at the time. And it also gave me a strong sense of confidence in where I come from, because that's pretty much how they start you off. When you go to school in Haiti, they start you with your history, right? And at the time, when I was in I was in preschool, middle school, I didn't really quite understand that because I went to a private Catholic school. I just thought it was laborious, because again, they had all of these tomes, these books, which would hurt my back because I would have to bring these books to school every day. But now in retrospect, I think that going through that process and then seeing where I am now, I'm so glad and grateful that I was in a situation where I had to learn about my history, because as you'll probably have noticed, nowadays you have to be skeptical of the news and the information that you're ingesting every day. And so that definitely provided this level of foundation. In terms of how I was as a kid, I was very highly confident, somewhat of an introverted introvert. Extroversion has always been a learned trait for me, and practice makes perfect. So at a certain point, people wouldn't notice that if they talk to me, think oh my goodness, she's very friendly, very sociable. But the introversion is still very much there. I definitely take the time to communicate and have fellowship with everyone. But in terms of renewing my energy, I have to sometimes take a step back and just be in my own zone to do some self-reflection. I'm trying to think, in terms of how I interacted with the world, I lived pretty much in my head. But again, having been in a school where I was surrounded by people, by children who came from different countries, it opened my eyes and made sure that I kept an open mind. And so I was very sociable. And then yet I was somewhat of a quiet child. I love to read, love to travel. I think if nothing else, that's where I found my love in books. Books it was a sort of escapism where it brought me to a new place. It gave me an escape to know more about the world outside of my inner city, because that's what I call it, my inner city in my head, where I'm the only resident. But yes, in a nutshell, that's That's a little bit about me and my journey, at least.
Brothers and sisters?
I do have one younger brother and one younger sister. So my brother is currently pursuing, well, he has an associate's degree in business management, and he's currently pursuing a bachelor's. And then my sister is living with my stepmother and my father, and she's in high school. So there's an age gap.
Yeah, a little bit. So, so were you still living at home when your parents decided to split?
That's a very good question. I didn't even know that they were split until like maybe late teens, because they remain great friends. Like, I never felt like this lack of presence from both my father and my mother. And then also, too, I forgot to mention, because I know we were talking about my childhood, but then there's a transition, right? Like from my childhood to becoming a teenager. And for that portion of my story, I wasn't living with my family. Due to the civil unrest in Haiti, they made the painful decision to have me stay in the States, have me stay with a host family with whom I lived for about 7 years. Oh. And my childhood ended at 12, and I had to raise myself. And because it's a different ballgame when you're living with people who are not family members. But that gives you an idea of just how much strife was taking place in Haiti at the time. And at the time, my father was getting his doctorate degree. I couldn't live with him on campus. My mother was trying to make ends meet, and then making sure that the people who were taking care of me had funding to take care of me. So it was a very tough time in my life. And then also, too, I always chuckle because I think sometimes there are people who they take things for granted. And I know for me, I've never had the luxury. I just never had the luxury to take a break, really. I literally became an adult, and I had to be on my grind, doing great in school, trying to get scholarships, trying to go to college. And again, my family, I'm not the first one in my family to get a terminal degree. Everyone has at least a master's degree in my family. So I grew up in that environment where education was and has always been like a pillar in terms of defining your identity. And so that got me through the tough times. And even if I saw my mother during holidays and what have you, it was not the same. And so even when you go in these different Facebook groups and platforms, they talk about divine femininity, learning to be a woman. I had to define my womanhood, even when I received guidance from my mother. But again, there was some level of distance, right? And so, yes. And then also, as I'm talking to your audience, I don't want to pit myself as a victim. I wasn't a victim. There was a choice that was made. I was thrusted into something that I was not necessarily ready for. And I think that's the part that we need to take into account when we're talking about changing challengers, right? Change is not always comfortable. My change was not comfortable at the age of 12. Like Dale Carnegie would say, life threw me lemons. I made lemonade and some key lime pies and all of that. So all of these experiences, like, right? Like we started off with my history, like what was my childhood like? Because I had a happy childhood. To move from my happy childhood, my cozy, lofty environment to a situation where I was always on survival mode. And I don't take any of these things for granted. I think that if nothing else, it has made me a better advocate, especially in my field right now in public health. I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to let you interject.
No, are you kidding? No, the more you talk, the better it is, because we're getting it from you. So, but I do have a couple of questions. So basically, so you're saying, so because of what was going on in Haiti, your parents decided, hey, we're going to protect our child, right? Thing to do, right? Not exactly the most comfortable thing, but the right thing. And I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for them either. They don't want to let their little.
It wasn't.
So you end up moving in with a host family. And did you end up, is that when you went to Miami?
No, so great question. So I was born in Florida, but when I went to live with this host family, was living in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, big city and cold.
Big city and cold. Trust me. I remember the blizzards, but I do not. long to live in Boston and go through that winter. Our winters are pretty, they pretty rough.
Yeah. I grew up in Chicago, so I
Oh,
understand winters.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to school. I'm getting my doctorate, my DRPH in public health leadership in Chicago. So
That's amazing.
I love your city. I have to.
We're in Chicago. What college?
University of Illinois at
Circle
Chicago.
campus? Or Champaign?
No, not Champaign. There's
Circle.
Champaign.
Circle campus.
Maybe it's Circle Campus.
Yeah, UIC.
UIC,
University of
yeah.
Illinois Circle campus.
UIC. But
Yeah,
and
that's
it's an
downtown.
online program, so I only get to go there to your city like in August. So
Well, better to go in August. At least they're not sending you in December or January.
they call isn't
February.
that the reason why they call it the Wind City?
Windy City. Yeah.
Windy
Yeah,
City.
it'll blow you around. It'll definitely blow you around. I love downtown Chicago between April and the beginning of November.
Yeah.
That's the greatest time for you to be down there. Any after that, then it could get pretty treacherous.
Yes, yes. Actually, plane tickets are much cheaper from what I'm seeing in March. But as soon as you get to the August, July, it gets you're paying a hefty fee, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, look what you're doing. You know what I mean? What you're doing is stuff for the greater good. So we definitely need more people like that. So, okay, so you moved to Boston, you're living with a host family, and you realize that, so that I think is extremely mature of you, because you had to realize that, okay, I'm over here, I need to do something. You need to I don't know if you had to step it up or if it was something that was just natural to you as far as academia goes.
Both.
Oh, all right. Well, great. So you realize that. Yeah, no, you talked about it, how that you were like, all right, I'm here. I'm not taking it for granted. I'm going to get good grades. And you knew that you wanted to go to college. Obviously, that was something that was instilled by your parents.
Yeah.
So just going back, so your mother and your father stayed in Haiti?
No, my father was living in the States, and then my mother remained in Haiti. But I didn't know that it was like a split or the beginning of a split. But I didn't know until my late teens. And again, I never felt the absence. So didn't really matter at this point.
And your father was also but he was going to college, or was he?
Yeah, my father was just getting his doctorate at the time.
Okay. What did he have a doctorate in?
I believe it's in economics and political science. And he has multiple master's degrees, Brad. So not trying to, I'm going to tell you right now, after this DRPH, like, I'm not going back to school. I'm just focusing on the school of life. Yeah. So
I'm with you. I'm alphabet soup. I don't put it here because this is not about me. It's always about the guest. But I have an MBA. And I've got several certificates in IT, and I have several certificates in fitness and the whole bit. So I understand.
My father.
Yeah, I understand not wanting to go back to school because I did not want to go back.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a nerd and I love school. I love what I do. And I think like it's a bigger discussion of when you go, at least for me, when I was going to college, like I wanted to do something I was passionate about. Now, this whole idea of understanding and finding your mission and your vision. No, I was not really embedded into the theoretical frameworks of trying to find my mission at the time. I just wanted to do something that could allow me to impart wisdom, impart the knowledge that I've gained as a 12-year-old, trying to make it out as the daughter of an immigrant. Before my mother finally came, I think around 2007. And that's when I left the host family and I was reunited. That's what I'm going to call it, a reunion with my people. And that's how I landed on public health. Initially, I wanted to go to medical school. I was on the pre-med track. And then along the way, I just thought, I don't know if this is a good fit. Like, I want to focus on population health. And I know if I become a pediatrician, it's more so case management, you taking care. Like, it's just not that I have something wrong with that, but I just felt like this was just not a good fit. And so around my sophomore year, I switched majors. So I was still able to keep my credits like all for all of the other classes I've taken. So it didn't hurt me that much. And so I switched to public health and I just fell in love with it. And it's almost like when we're talking about challenges too, I think and then I spoke about this earlier about keeping an open mind and an open heart. That was also taking a leap of faith to go from, I really want to become a pediatrician, to taking a moment and realizing, no, I need to make a change because I'm not happy. And I had to listen to myself. I had to block out the noise of people. And that's another thing that I've learned along the way, is that sometimes it's best to move quietly. I was so overzealous at the time. I really wanted to become a pediatrician. No one could stop me. But then and as a believer, I kept thinking, well, is God able to even use me if I continue down that path? And there were so many signs. And then I said, no, I think I have to make the move. And if I fall on my face, then I fall on my face. I'll be able to pick myself back up again. But I have to have enough faith that something good will come out of it. And it did. The gates just opened, and I was flooded with opportunities, like with internships, things that like literally opportunities that I did not get when I was in biology. If nothing else, I felt like I was struggling to get opportunities. And that's I think it's a huge part of when we're talking about life changes. We need to be able to take a leap of faith and not always try to have everything figured out. And I'm speaking to my analytical mind right now, not have everything figured out from point A to point B. You may have a plan, and it's also good to just it's also good to make sure that you create space essentially, you have to give space for you to be surprised. And I guess that's how you kind of land on your mission and vision and the people and the places that you need to be.
So, yeah. So just to reiterate, obviously the audience knows this, but life-changing challengers, the mission is telling stories about people facing adversity, trauma, injury, whatever, in an uncommon way. Well, you had this change in your life that was forced upon you that could be considered adversity, and you had a plan. And I think the uncommon route that you made was you went into public health. And then, of course, that led you into, and we're going to get to that, into this career you've got with brand strategy and writing coaching. And that's where we're going to move in there in just a minute. So your dad, just to reiterate, dad's in college, mom's in Haiti. You're with a host family.
Yeah.
And you've been making reference to faith. So was that always something that was within Haiti and with your host family? Was the church a big part of your life?
Yes, church has always been a big part of my life. And at the same time, I would be remiss to say that I'm not an over religious. So I'm one of these people, like, I question everything under the sun, and I'm unapologetic about it, because I think that the more knowledge you get, the more you have to be, and I said that earlier, you have to look at things with like a fine-tooth comb. Because what I'm noticing is that all of the granular details that you're looking for when you're listening to people talk, when you're reading the newspaper, sometimes those granular details are not there for a reason. And I always have to ask myself, who is driving the story? Who is writing the narrative? And make no mistake, I even think about this when I go to the museum. I think about who funded the museum, who funded what's inside of the museum, because they get to tell the story. And are they telling the full story? And so I think of the Bible, I take the Bible with, I guess, a grain of salt. I don't take it literally word by word, because there are certain books that have been banned from the Bible. The original Bible, I think they banned 13 books. So the version that we have, right, does not include everything. And so even now I'm trying to think, well, where can I get some of these banned books? I probably will never be able to access it. I think it's at the Vatican level, but
I literally was just about to say that. I'm going to be taking a trip here soon overseas. I'm going to be in Rome. And I just thought about that. I'm like, well, I'm going to be in Rome. Oh, I'm going to go ask the Vatican while I'm there. And I'm going to get back to Venchele and tell her exactly what's going on.
You have to.
And I'm going to walk up there. Pope, hey, Pope there, buddy. Listen, my friend says that there was some banned books and everything. Where can we get a copy of the Bible as it was written the first time?
Is it available on Amazon Prime?
Yes, right. Exactly.
No, but to be fair, I think that the way I see my faith is that I have a very close relationship with God. I talk to him the way I talk to an old friend. I'm talking to him the way I'm talking to you right now. I just always have an issue with, like, I'm not the type of person who's going to wait until Sunday to go to a specific place to worship him. I think that it's like those holidays, right? Like it's not a holiday, but Valentine's Day. Like, I always have an issue with Valentine's Day because I'm thinking I'm not waiting until February to tell someone that I love them. I'm going to be about that life, every day. And so what it has provided me, I think my faith has provided me a compass. And knowing that because I'm Roman Catholic, so knowing from the Bible's perspective that God gives us free will, I know that I can always change my mind. I think that the maturity and the wisdom comes when you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to live with the consequences of that, good or bad. And I think that's what it has allowed me to do. It has given me this sense of groundedness. I feel centered. I'm on firm ground. No one can shake me. Right. And then also being an informed consumer, questioning things and doing my own research, I think has been very helpful on my journey.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because when you say that you have to watch out where the narrative is. So it's sometimes it's like so blatant. So just for instance, Fox News is completely on the right and CNN is completely on the left.
Yes.
They both omit facts to speak to the narratives.
Facts.
So, yeah.
Facts.
So where do you find it? You know what I mean? Do you use AP? You don't know. Obviously not. And then the other one that I actually listen to because it's just I like the way they present the news, but I still have to think about it, is NPR.
Yes.
Which is completely left, right?
Yes.
But it's so, yeah. But so sometimes you're like, oh, really? Well, why aren't you giving this view? And why aren't you talking about this view? And why aren't you talking? So you're getting it from, so I actually watch a lot of all of it. The only thing I refuse to watch is MSNBC because it's so far out of the range. But I look at both because I want to know on both sides where one is talking, and then I do my own research. But
I'm like this now. You look at both sides of the coin. Yes, no, that's what. Yes, I'm like that as well.
Great, yeah. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There's a site called The Ground, and it's really cool. Is the fact that so they list like the news and they do it in articles, but then they sort it, or they give you red, green, red, yellow, and green, and like red is right, so it tells you that the article, hey, this article is right leaning, and green is all right, this article is left leaning, and then they've got center. This one's kind of in the center.
I wrote it down. I have to check it out.
It's
the first time I'm hearing about it.
I didn't know about it either. I caught it on somebody else's podcast. Yeah, and I heard about it, and I started reading it, and it's definitely, you can see where it is, and then they'll list the same article. Like it'll be a different title, but it's like the same articles on the same thing on all three levels. So you can like, all right, well, what did they say here that they didn't say here? What was the same? And you can take a look at it. But that's a lot of time. You know what I mean? It's a lot of time for you to look at that. So yeah, you got to pick your battles, what you want to learn about. So anyway, all right.
I appreciate that resource. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I will. I definitely will. And obviously I mentioned it, so I'll put it in the show notes as well. So, all right. So you've gone through high school and now you were going to be a pediatrician. You had that locked and loaded. And then all of a sudden what it sounded like to me was that as a pediatrician, you're going to work one case at a time.
Yes.
With public health, you're going to be able to help full populations,
yes,
or subgroups. So is that kind of where you were leaning at that point?
That's where I was leading at that point. And then also too, I have to analyze this from the lens of the 16-year-old because I started college at the age of 16.
What?
And so by the time I graduated, I wasn't legal to do.
You couldn't even drink yet.
I couldn't even drink yet. Oh my, right? Yes, that's when you take a swig. No, you're right.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. That's like the Big Bang Theory. Sheldon graduated college at 14. It was Dr. Sheldon by the time he was 17 or something like that. It was crazy. And you're like following right there. Done with high school at 16. Done with your bachelor's, your BA in public health at what, 19?
20. And then I decided to do the Peace Corps. So I moved to Senegal, West Africa for the contract was for 2 years, but I stayed for 3 because my contract was renewed for a 3rd year. But it was not guaranteed.
Yeah, but what was that like? Senegal, West Africa? That's awesome.
Yeah, so the experience was great. And I don't say this lightly. I think that it very much aligned with my values of wanting to travel and experience new cultures. And it had its challenges too, because sometimes things can be lost in translation. And so I think if nothing else, like what it has taught me, and I always remember this quote, and I don't remember if it was from a mentor or a friend who told me this, but knowledge doesn't bring power into our lives until we apply what we have learned. And I think that as someone who started working in the Peace Corps, it gave me an outlet to put into practice what I had learned in class, like in public health, and bring everything together. And I'll tell you, working with people is not always easy. You're dealing with different personalities, your different social values and interests. I lived in a rural community with no running water, no electricity. And so I was given the bare minimum of resources, if you will. And I had to, once again, make key lime pie. But in a nutshell, those 3 years taught me that I am someone who is resilient. I know this is like the hot button word that's being used nowadays, but I am a resilient person. I am someone who's flexible and adaptable. I can live under extreme conditions and survive. And I think that's where the faith and being grounded and centered in your values, knowing what you can or cannot do comes into play. And self-reflection, even now, like as someone who's pursuing a doctorate in public health leadership, is not afforded to many people because we live in a society where we're always on the go. We don't have the time to reflect. And I think there's so many conflicts that could be avoided. Had one person just say, well, I'm going to take a moment to think about how I showed up today to this person and how I could have done things differently. So yes, so that's, at least that's what's coming up for me, like as I'm talking about my Peace Corps experience.
So no running water, your minimum resources, and I'm just going to ask you to do it quickly, but can you run us through like a normal day that you had when you were in the Peace Corps? Like getting up, what would you do? With these lack of resources, how are you taking care of yourself? And
the normal day would look different for everyone. So I know in my community, like when I got up, I just got ready. I would have breakfast with my host family. And then I would, again, some days, because Senegal has different seasons. And so in the rainy season, people don't really go outside unless you're a farmer. And so you need to go and plant the seeds and do what you need to do before the rain comes, like in the afternoon. But you would pretty much be locked in your room. But for me, it was literally just having breakfast with my family, starting to work. So at the time, I was trying to bring them like a brand new clinic. And so I was networking with many organizations in the area. And so I spent maybe a good chunk of the day with these local partners. And then around 5 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. their time, I would already be home, like having dinner with my family. Then we would talk about the day, because in my family, my host father was a farmer, And so he would just tell stories. And don't forget that the people I lived with, I don't even think they had a high school. Well, I think their reading level was at the 6th grade level.
Right.
And so, and I think that experience is humbling as well, to come from a family where it's like I was surrounded by people who are educated, to living with people who were not afforded that opportunity for whatever reason. It humbles you. And then I think also when we talk about my normal day, I also made time to read the Quran, because the majority of the population in Senegal are Muslims. And so it was important for me to understand why they believed in what they believed, how they moved in the world, like what was their compass. So I made time to dedicate, maybe if it's like an hour or two, to read the Quran. And I read it in French because I'm a native French speaker. It will never compare to the Arabic version. And they will tell you that too. So it helped me. It helped me as an American to go into the country, not projecting how I think things should be done. Because remember that when people come to the US, it's almost, I don't want to say we force them, but it's expected that they have like a certain level of proficiency in English. And without realizing that when they do that, they're sacrificing a part of themselves. So I think sometimes it can be a little bit arrogant if I go to someone else's country and I ask for them to speak English to me. No, I will find a way. I'll try to meet you where you are, learn your language, learn your customs, and learn your values, because I know when you come to my country, we're expecting you to do that. And also, I won't be so naive. I know that the commercial language is English. With globalization, that's the number one language that we can all sell our products and again, you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, let's face it. America wants the world language to be English. But I think you're absolutely 100% correct. If you're coming to America and you're coming here to live, I think the expectation is that you learn a level of English that you can communicate with almost anybody. But if we expect that, we need to feel the same way. When we go to somewhere else, we should be expected that we have to pick up enough of the language to be able to communicate, get around. And you pick up languages pretty easy when you're immersed. When everything around you when everybody's talking a different language and you're trying to figure out your way, you figure out your way pretty fast. I was never a good speaker, but I spent 18 months in Korea, and every chance I got, I would go into the economy, right? So I was in the military. So I would spend my day speaking English because I'd be on base. But every chance I got, as soon as we were done with work, I was on the economy. On the weekend, when we had any kind of liberty, I was out. I was in Seoul. I was in Daegu. I was in Busan, everywhere, to the point where I could understand it. And I could speak a few words here and there. But funny story, I was on Camp Casey. I would go to Uijeongbu on a train, and then from Uijeongbu I'd go to Seoul. I was on this train, and these school kids jumped on the train, and they started making fun of me as being a white boy. And they were making fun of me, and they didn't realize that I knew what they were saying. Right. Until next to me, it just happened to be there. I just was lucky enough for it to be there, but there was a folded newspaper in Hangul, which is the actual language in Korea. And I looked at them and I just gave them the side eye, and I picked up the newspaper and I unfolded it and I went, just so they can hear it. And I started reading, and they just looked at, they didn't know what I was reading, but they just looked at me and I just gave them the eye, and then they quieted down.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's what I meant by immersion, though. Because I immersed myself, I had enough where I could listen and I could understand what they were saying, like pick out interesting words, and I could probably get away with speaking to get myself around, but not like completely. But that was also because I went back to base every time. I wasn't using it 24/7 like you had to speak. I don't even, what is Senegalese?
No, I had to. So the main languages were Wolof and French. But in my community, I spoke Mandinka, which is spoken by very few people. Because when I was going through my training, before I was sworn in as a volunteer, the trainers thought that Wolof would be too easy for me because I already knew how to speak French. Right. They just don't know. I think I should have been speaking Wolof. I think I probably would have had, my learning curve would have been shorter if they had allowed me to do that, because Mandinka Sose is, in my humble opinion, a beautiful language. It's tough in terms of the consonants, the vowels, and it also just how the verb comes before the noun. It can get confusing real quick.
Oh, I can imagine. Yes. So you were there for 3 years.
3 years. So 2 years, that's the standard
contract.
And then that's the standard contract. And then in order to do a third year, you would have to talk about the projects that you would be interested in continuing and what have you. So in my case, I had applied for a Fulbright scholarship, but I didn't get it. And then the doctor I was going to work with, because he was doing a pilot project on family planning. And so I jumped on this project because he had a connection with a nonprofit NGO based in Belgium. And so I pitched it to them, and they had to make a decision. And there's a select criteria that they go through. Again, in terms, they look at your health, your health status. They look at your past performances. And I had a stellar, if I may say so myself, stellar performance. I did my job. I was able to do a lot of community projects with my community. They're still going on to this day. And then remember the clinic that I told you about, I was able to include my community in an already established project. And that was some time ago. And then now they have a maternity ward. And I believe the clinic has become a hospital. And so, so I'm telling you, again, it was literally community-based, participatory community project. And so we did it together, because that was one thing I was afraid of. And I believe they had spoken to me about, is that they were saying that there were many foreigners who came in and just created these projects. And then you would have this building in the middle of nowhere that's no longer functional, right? And then I didn't want to be taking up space. I wanted to use what they already have and just enhance it and amplify it. But before I even contacted and communicated with other NGOs, I did a survey. So going from door to door, there were many people living in my community, door to door, and talked to them. And I think that afterwards, it became clear based on the survey results that there was a need for us to have a newer building, because this small building was just not adequate for for women to come in and conceive in that. Right. It needed an upgrade for sure.
Nice. So that's a huge accomplishment, Venchele. My God, to get a public clinic up and running, and you left a path for it to get bigger and broader, and now there's a maternity ward. That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So props, totally kudos up there. That's crazy. So, all right. So you come back. Where did you end up coming back? Did you end up going back to Boston?
Oh, yes, I came back to Boston even 1 year in, because that's another thing too. As I was talking to my parents, because they would always check up on me while I was in Senegal, my mother, I believe, became sick. And so in retrospect, I think she didn't want to worry me, because it was at the tail end of my third year. And I believe that my contract was going to be renewed again. And I politely declined. I said, you know what? I just have a funny feeling that I need to go home now. I did what I need to do here. And so I left. And so I ended my contract and came back to Boston, Massachusetts. And then 3 months later, my mother passed away.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. It's been such a long time. Looking back on it, it was a bit it was a traumatic event, because I came back. I was reacclimating myself to the U.S. And then it just so happens that in this phase, I was practically living at the hospital with her, because as a public health professional, but also to based on the fact that we're talking about earlier that I have written articles on race. I was always afraid that the people at the hospital were not going to treat her with respect and with dignity. And that as a daughter, I had to fulfill my role and be there. And so I lived with her in that hospital for from August, I believe. I took breaks where I would go home and check up on my brother, but I practically lived there until she passed away. It's not a tough conversation for me to have because it took me some time to really grasp her loss, just because once again, I just feel like I had to step up. And it's not something that I wanted to do at the age of 25, because I've done so much that I thought, okay, I'm going to have some level of reprieve. But when you decide to live life and take life by the horns, you are asking for constant change. Change is never going to stop. And so I took it upon myself to join a community where I could grieve, like a counseling group, to grieve with other people who had lost a loved one. I became staunch advocate and a shoulder for other people to lean on as well, because I remember one of my friends had lost her mother around the same time, literally a year later. And so we comforted each other and we gave each other advice. We were going through all of these transitions. I was looking for a job and I couldn't get a job in Boston. And then finally, I had to leave my brother behind with a host family to finish his last year of high school, because I had gotten a job by the tail end of 2016, but I didn't want to uproot him. And so I came to DC. And then from DC, I lived in Maryland, but my job was in DC. And then I would do the back and forth. During that year to check up on him, give him pocket money. Just my father and I were pretty much, my father who's still in Haiti, we were co-parenting because he had lost his mother at the age of 15. And I can only imagine how that impacted him. And that's in how he's still impacted by it, because mom was a kind and just a gentle soul. She was a great human being, very loving. And I even remember the people at the hospital still reached out to me afterwards, I think a few months later, just to say, hey, just wanted to let you know we're thinking about you. And if you need anything, because they sent us gift cards, I felt supported. And I knew, once again, I had to rely on my faith to get me through that stage of my life.
I can't even imagine. May I ask, and talk about it if you don't want to, but can I ask what her diagnosis was?
She had pneumonia. She contracted pneumonia. It was not a protracted illness. She had high blood pressure and all of that, but that's what she had. That was the diagnosis.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Interesting enough, though, just so you see, my second duty station, my first duty station was Korea. My second duty station was the Pentagon. So I lived in DC for 3.5 years during that. And then I was there an extra year another 2 years before they actually ended up calling me back after I separated. So I know my way around DC as well. So we got something in common there as well.
That's interesting because I'm set to go and visit the Pentagon because one of my friends and also colleagues works there. So I'm interested in knowing what it looks like on the inside. Did you have a good experience? Am I allowed to ask?
I loved DC. I loved working at the Pentagon, and I had 2 offices. So I had an office in the Pentagon and I had an office in Roslyn, which is just over the bridge. And that was the greatest experience ever. And when I was there, they gutted it and reconstructed it. So I got to see the whole thing just in time.
Yeah.
I separated the first time because I ended up getting called back. I ended up separating the first time, May 31st, 2001. I still had a good non-expired Pentagon badge for 9/11. So I actually left when a friend of mine called me when the towers were hit, and I thought it was a hoax. And then all of a sudden, because I was only 6 miles away, And then when I found out that it hit the Pentagon,
Yeah.
I literally got in the car and drove to see if I can help out with triage.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let me in, but I tried. It took me about 15 minutes to get there. It took me 4 hours to get home.
Right.
6 miles. I could have ran it faster, but because of the traffic and everything that was going on that day. But that was an interesting day. All right. So you're going in. So you went into DC because that's where you found a job. When did you start like really putting efforts into writing?
The writing piece, like if we take a step back, like again, to go back to the childhood piece, because I think I was sharing with you that I fell in love with books, right? As an introverted kid. And I think that's where I fell in love with words and just how you can put it together, make meaning out of it, and then generate different responses from people. For whatever reason, something about it just attracted me to it. But when I got to college in Boston, there were people who were asking me to provide content feedback, like on different topics. And at the time, I didn't make much of it. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to friends help friends. So I'm going to help friends. And I've never seen it modeled, at least in college. I didn't see people making a living out of it. Actually, if nothing else, the people who would make a living out of it always talked about how they were struggling. So I said to myself, well, I don't know if I want to go there. Right. And so that's how I started Pathway Coach Writing informally. I didn't have a website. I didn't have a brand, but I was helping people use writing as a branding strategy. And so when I saw that I had a knack for it around, I think 2019, like right before the pandemic, one of my friends told me, hey, Venchele, like you need to start a website because you can't be doing this informally anymore. Like, how can people find you if you don't have like a social media presence? And so that's when I started Pathway Coach Writing formally. And ever since, it's been blooming ever since. Last year, I definitely went through the ebb and flow because, again, I started school. Like I finished my master's in public health in health policy analysis and evaluation in 2022. And then I was applying for doctoral programs right after and started school in August 2023 at UIC. And so I had to take a step back and prioritize school. Especially, I think we tend to prioritize the things we pay for. Right. So that's what happened to me. I said, well, I was getting all these projects and I said, yes, like my ego was saying, well, Venchele, like, look at you with all these. But I just said, no, I have to prioritize my school right now. And so I just decreased the number of projects that I started accepting. So
is Pathways, did you monetize that as your...
Yes, I monetized it. Like Pathway Coach Writing, yes, it's my side gig, my side business. I help businesses and writers, coaches, C-suite level executives, edit their books, any writing projects that they have, book proposals. And then now the newest service that I offer is to connect them to podcasts, because that was a need when I first started in 2019. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I just didn't know how to make those connections with publishers. It was always a situation where they finish working with me and they have to go and look for a publisher if they didn't want to self-publish. But now I'm trying to change that. And since then, I've made connections with several publishers that I know personally whom I can just recommend them to. But again, the caveat is it depends on the genre of the book. There's just a series. There's just so much to take into account. And then recently, I've been getting a lot of, well, I shouldn't say recently, for the past 3 years, I've been getting projects for ghostwriting. So even though right now I don't officially have it listed on my website, but that's something I think it's in the pipeline once I graduate that I can start working on.
Yeah. So just for everybody's information, it's pathwaycoachwriting.com.
Yeah.
And I will put a link in the show notes for that. So check that out and check out her blog. because there's some really amazing articles in there and stuff that'll really make you think and like blew me away. So
thank you.
Let's be freaking honest. I lean right. Okay. I'm just going to say that. But reading about one of them, which was the one, and I'll pull it up here.
But here's the thing, Brad. I love how you said, can I ask you a question? When you say that, because in my network, I have people who lean left, lean right, don't have like they are independent. Let's just put it that way. Do you feel like you get judged for saying that? Because this is a safe space. This is a safe space.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, because I'm not judging you. No. Lean right in my sphere of influence, so I can understand.
Yeah, no, I definitely get it. And unfortunately, on both sides, there's some intolerance.
There is some intolerance.
So and in the media, the intolerance is highlighted. So you've got people that, and I was a victim of it in 2016. I lost a lot of friends. I had people like all over Facebook saying, if you voted for Trump, defriend me. And I'm like, he hasn't even stepped into the freaking office yet. We don't know anything that he's going to do. We don't know it's all strictly on his character and his personality, which does not dictate what the kind of work that this man will do. So I was already like, and I fought back a little bit. I'm like, hey, wait a second here. Hold on. He's not even in there yet, but people were so, and I hate the word, triggered. And he hadn't even stepped into the office yet. He had just happened to have won the election. So, but I do have a friend, a very good friend who leans way left.
Yeah.
And you know what? We butt heads and we have these great conversations. Fantastic conversations. And we're both very passionate about what we believe. And you know what? We can sit there and we look at it. We go, okay, I think we about gave that conversation a run for its money. Okay, hug it out. And we talk about something else. And that's it. And I'm like, and I don't understand why people aren't like that. You know
I think sometimes, we've moved away from focusing strictly on policies. You know what I mean? Now it's like a team sport. And I think that's the reason why for me in my line of work, like I got to be very careful to just be able to look at both sides. It's so critically important for me to do that, right? But it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you, just because you may feel a certain way about a given topic from the right side and then another way, left side. So it's just, you do what you can. You do what you can. You do the best you can. And that's all we can really do, Brad. And I appreciate you feeling comfortable enough to say that. I chuckled when you said the way you said it. I was just like, no, I'm not judging you. Like, it's a safe space. This is a safe space.
But see, and that's the thing is the fact that, I think the assumption should be that I can tell you that, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit more conservative than the next guy. Not be judged now and be able to have healthy discourse.
Yes.
Without calling people names, without using 4-letter words, having to like walk away because you're Charlie Kirk on Turning Point. People hate him. But the thing is that you'll never, ever hear him. He never calls anybody a name, and he's constantly just asking questions. And people just walk away. Oh, and I'm not listening to this. I'm not listening to this. And you hear those words all the time. I'm not listening to this because they've judged. Yeah. They've made the judgment and they're not moving from their position instead of, okay, well, let's listen. Like you were saying, you grew up with an open mind. So you've got one up on a lot of people. I grew up that way. As well. So I had a very conservative childhood. Yeah. And then my first degree is in theater.
Okay. Well, that's
exactly. So I was then I don't want to say indoctrinated, but they were tried to a lot of the left side of it. And I believed a lot of it. So I'm like, I lean right, but I believe in pro-choice. I believe in gay marriage. The rest of it, I've got a little problem with, but this is not a political discussion.
But I appreciate you sharing that because I think that as much as when people come on your show, right, there's this assumption that the show has to be about the person you're hosting, and it shouldn't be that way. This is a conversation. And so the fact that you interjected and you said what you said, I'm like, your audience needs to hear that too. So I respect you, and I respect how you did this. Like that's,
I appreciate that. Oh, yeah. And when I draw and I do that, and I know that you are so freaking busy, I can't imagine that you had a chance to listen to any of the episodes. But you'll find out that when I draw parallels,
actually.
Oh, you did? Okay, great.
Yeah, but that was like before.
Oh, before, yeah. So for everybody out there, this is the third try. Third time's the charm. We both had the first couple of appointments that Venchele and I had 2 issues. One was technical, one was familial. And so this is actually the third appointment we've had to do this podcast. So, but third time's the charm. But yeah, so I draw parallels.
Yeah.
When there's a parallel, like you said, you were in DC. It's the first time I've mentioned people. So they get a little bit with each episode. I draw a parallel to my guest and you have a little bit about me. So I always thought about doing one like interview myself, but I like the fact that people get bits rather than chunking it all in one. So, but no, I appreciate your open-mindedness. I love the fact that you had this open mind and it was opened up to you so that you could see it. But you also were like thrown into when you were in Senegal. So you really got to see both sides. You got to go into, let's face it, Boston.
Have nots, because even in my childhood, like I grew up upper middle class. So I was surrounded by abject poverty. Sometimes they'll tell you, like, even when you live in the States, like if you go from one zip code to the next, you can discern like what the health status of these individuals are or that community and population. Well, that's how it felt like. I never had my needs unmet. And so to go from that lifestyle to having to survive and like getting bits and pieces, but not everything, understanding the value of $1. Those are very important life lessons. For some people, they end up learning it maybe their late teens, early 20s. But for me, I had an introduction course to it at the age of 12. And if I had to go back, if I had a do-over, sometimes people will say, well, I would have done it differently. And to be honest, I think everything is as it should be. Everything I went through was for a reason, and it made me a better advocate in public health. It made me a better person, because those types of experiences can make you bitter or better. And I think for me, it made me a better person, a better friend, a better sister, a better mentee, a better mentor, and a better advocate in my field of study. So you're working on your doctorate and you've got pathways. Do you have a full-time job as well too? Yes, I have a 9-to-5, but I don't talk about this is not related to my 9-to-5. So, but I work in public health. I work for an agency. And so that's my 9-to-5. And then pathway coach writing is my side gig. And then obviously
you're working on your doctorate, but you are working in public health. So with all that training that you got, you are helping people right now. And that is the biggest thing ever, is the ability to help other people. And that's why I do this, right?
Yes.
And I'll reiterate it because it seems to come up every time, but I do this so people like you can tell their story, showing the path that they made. And if somebody can get one nugget, just one little piece of either inspiration, knowledge, or wisdom, and use that to level up or to take the next step in their life, to attain a goal that they've been wanting to, then it's done its job, right? It's helped just that one nugget of information. And from my audience's point of view, from some of the comments and stuff that I've gotten back, people have been talking about, no one walks away with just one. So I'm good. So I'm like, and you've like put out a lot, the ability to be open-minded, the ability to look at both sides. If anybody gets a chance to read some of the articles on racism and public health and health in lower economic populations and neighborhoods, and there's just some great stuff, and and that's why I'm gonna link it and make sure. So it's pretty amazing. And the ability that just the drive you had you went into public health and you went to the Peace Corps. Like that just shows a through line of from the very beginning, all you wanted to do was really make a difference in other people's lives. And obviously in the community that you lived in Senegal, you made a huge difference that's still compounding today. That's make you feel just amazing.
It does. It does. And speaking of nuggets of wisdom, one thing I would leave with your audience is to, regardless of where they are in their lives and just thinking about why they are here on this earth, it would be to just focus on what you can control. Focus on what you can control and allow things to pan out the way that they need to. Because the biggest lesson I've had to learn as someone who has a type A personality is that not everything needs my intervention. Sometimes, and then also, if you feel the need to always intervene, where's that coming from? Are you in environments and settings where you don't feel like your voice matters? And I would welcome people to say, okay, if my voice is muted all the time, it's like, do I need to make a change? Right. And so I welcome people to think about that. Focus on what you can control.
It leaves us with one of the greatest sayings ever. And that's the serenity prayer. God grant serenity to accept the things I cannot control, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we'll keep talking about that being the alcohol's anonymous and the drug anonymous, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's life. It's a pure life right there. So, yeah. So, Venchele, thank you. Thank you so much for, sharing your story with us. And I wish you all the success in the world. I cannot wait for you to graduate because I don't know if you're going to end up in government because obviously the doctorate is somewhere down the line in your life if you end up there, because we need people like you. You would be the person, if you were going to be my congressperson, my senator, I would be voting for you just because of the way you think. And it's always been people first. Those are the type of people that we need in Congress right now. So
I receive it. And I appreciate you, my friend, for doing that, for saying that to me. It's easy sometimes to lose sight of the impact that I'm having on people, the impact that I'm having on you right now. And so the fact that you're doing some self-reflection here, you're just speaking from the heart, and I respect that. And I appreciate you for that.
Oh, well, I appreciate you. So anyway, thank you again. And for the rest of you, if you like what you heard, go ahead and click if you're watching it on YouTube, click the like button, the subscribe button. If you're listening to this on a podcast, if you can give us a quick review and then share it with someone that you think might really benefit from all this information. But that being said, thank you very much. And we will see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.